5G has the capability to be the clear game changer for the success of the industry, for the telecommunications operators, but it's not going to do it, it's not going to help you if you don't make transformation. And so what I want to do is talk about how to change the business model, to think differently about what you do in order to create value. And we're going to focus on 5G as the enterprise G, thinking differently about where the source of revenue is going to come from, and where the source of profitability is going to come from. Because quite frankly, over the last 10 years, it's not been a particularly good story, right? The return on invested capital is plummeting for the industry. And if you look at the amount of value being created, if you measure that in profitability, if you measure that in market cap, the shift is happening from the telecommunications providers to the internet companies, to Meta, who we heard from earlier, to Google, to Apple, to Alibaba, to Tencent, and so on. If you look at the top 8 players of these internet companies, they're doing a lot better by most measures than the top 25 in telecommunications. So we need to change. We need to get uncomfortable with what we're doing today, and we need to do things differently. And so I'm going to talk about sort of 2 different dimensions. The main focus is going to be around how to change the model of doing business to be a data company. And what that means to the organization and what the capabilities you have to invest in are to be successful. And so the main thesis here is we need to evolve from a telco mindset to a dataco mindset. And when we talk about the value that we create, it's going to be from the data. And 5G enables the acquisition of very, very rich data through applications that we're enabling, through the ability to acquire this data in low latency and put it into action and create value. The question is, somebody's going to do that. The question is, who's going to do it? And what are the capabilities and transformations required in order to be successful? If we look at kind of traditional sort of model of telecommunications, not a particularly agile business. The sort of traditional telco might close the books once a month in arrears. That's certainly not best in class today. Best in class would be I close the books every single day, every day. Right? So I know working with Verizon and AT&T in the US, they close the books every single day. But in fact, even that's not good enough, right? We need to be able to predict what's going to happen even before it happens financially, where the profitability is coming from, what are the levers that we can pull in order to drive change. We need to be much more sophisticated in our marketing, how we manage our network, the digital experience. Regulation is an interesting one because traditionally, regulation is something that we have to do so the regulators don't close our doors. Pure cost, typically done in silos, typically ticking a box in order to meet some requirement. And in best in class, we at least realize that that's unacceptable to have this sort of regulatory regime be an anchor on our profitability. We need to exploit the regulatory dividend, which says if we're gathering this data and we're integrating this data and we're giving it to the regulator, shame on us if we're not using it for driving our own business transformation. So reuse of the data is very important. Value add reporting and analytics, not just regulatory ticking the box. But the real driver is when we start leading the charge rather than following the regulators. We're ahead of the regulators. We're setting the tone for the industry. We're making it possible to evolve from a telco to a dataco. Recognizing that, especially in Europe with GDPR and other considerations, Being a data co is not something that you can assume. We have to be very careful with how data is being used, protect the anonymity of our subscribers, make sure that the data is being used with proper protection and security and so on. All these are within the realm of capabilities today. But we need to make that mind shift change to start treating data, and I'm going to say it in a way that is a little bit different, not as an asset. I actually hate this term, data as an asset. An asset is something that we accumulate, put it in a warehouse, count the number of bytes as a measure of success of how much data asset we've accumulated. And I would argue the number of bytes in your data warehouse is a good measure of cost. It's not a good measure of value. I want you to change the mindset to data as a product. A product is to be consumed. It's to be able to create value for your customers, which you can monetize. And when I say your customers, again, this is the enterprise G. So your customers are the enterprises that you're going to help use data that you have as services. You're not giving away your data. You're creating value-added services in order to make this possible. So as we evolve from a telco to a techco to a data co, we need to make some changes, right? The Open Digital Architecture, recently published by TM Forum, is a sort of good foundation for thinking about moving towards data-centric operations. Recognizing the importance of having common repositories for data, recognizing the importance of service-based APIs for accessing the data, and thinking about that as a foundation for how we're going to monetize the data while, again, protecting the integrity of the data and the privacy of the data and so on. So we're going to change the business model. And being a data co is very, very different. Connectivity provider, right? We have the option to become the dumb pipe, a faster pipe, a higher throughput pipe, and so on. This will commoditize. It will continue to commoditize. So we can do wonderful things in terms of enabling all kinds of applications with our high-performance pipes, our low-latency, high-throughput pipes. But digital partner, digital means data. Digital partner means that we have the ability to acquire the data, package it, deliver access to that data as services, which enables smart. We don't want to be the dumb pipe. We want to be the smart digital partner, which provides access to data services so that our clients, other enterprises, can make smarter decisions for their customers. If we look at the market size for industry digitization, it's interesting, with 5G, there's a shift towards industries which have not traditionally been the beneficiaries of mobility applications. Right? Early mobility applications really benefit much more retail, financial services, media and entertainment, and so on. Right? With 5G, sort of helping do the transformation of factories and airports, and we heard earlier, ports, all kinds of opportunities there for collecting data, using data in a very different way. And so there's a shift in where the value is going to come from, where the data is going to come from with IoT enablement in 5G, which is huge. So let's talk about the monetization focus that we can benefit from. It's about the data, right? It's about the data, understanding customer behavior and using the data, but not just publishing the data, of course, but providing the analytics on top of it, right? So again, data is the raw material, the value add. We want to be the smart digital partner, not the commoditization, just sort of delivering data out the door. So analytics means we're taking all this data, this how our customers are using the network, and we're analyzing what's going on so that we can make better decisions around transportation networks. So we can make better decisions about targeting the behaviors of individual customers. This means as datacos, we need to understand capabilities like how do you do feature engineering? How do you take raw data, transform the raw data into features that can be the fuel for the deep learning and AI algorithms that really create the differentiation? And again, it's not the algorithms themselves. The mathematics are generally public domain, open source, and so on. It's the data that we uniquely have in its ability to fuel these algorithms and create the learning. To do the hyper-segmentation to an individual level, and to be able to drive that both with horizontal and vertical scaling. So horizontal scaling, to be able to score massive numbers of events or consumers with very high performance. But for me, more interesting is the ability to scale with very high concurrency, the scoring, and in real time understand what's happening, and then influence events. So if the consumer is in this particular geographic location, what are the opportunities to monetize our knowledge of the consumer in that location, in real time? And having location data, which we already know how to do, is not enough. We have to go beyond the location data. Yes, we're going to use that as foundation. We have to go beyond the location data to do the hypersegmentation and the model scoring to understand those behaviors, and then deploy with extreme agility and automation. Because if you don't do it in an automated way, not sustainable. Not sustainable, and you need the learning also to be completely automated. So we evolve from the kind of traditional view of the world with relatively simple value-added services and old ways of doing marketing and so on into a true sort of digital partner. Using the data that we acquire from this circle of life. So one of the telecommunications operators that I work with, they talk about the circle of life and enabling the circle of life for each individual subscriber. And then from that circle of life, we get a deep understanding about each individual very personally. And then we figure out how to monetize that to create a better experience for them, to create a value for our B2B, our enterprise clients, and of course that translates to value to our own profitability. And so this digital transformation that we need to take is founded on the data. So when we look at the requirements here, the equipment providers are enabling what they create to deliver data, to collect data. The telemetry on every piece of equipment out there in the world will be delivering data, and we, the telecommunications operators, need to be able to take that data, acquire it at massive scale, at low latencies, and then be able to take action on that data, to translate the raw data into data products that allow us to empower our clients to make better decisions for their clients. When we look at the data transfer and analysis, I'm going to focus on the bottom right hand of that middle square, and focus on learning from the applications industries on how to analyze data. Right? So it's not just about collecting the data, analyzing the data, building the value-added services so that we can drive a much different value proposition and monetization of the data in terms of service-based APIs that are ultimately going to benefit our clients and ultimately their end users, their clients, the consumers. So the opportunity here is predicted to be, depending on who you believe, depending on how far out you look and so on, by 2026, $3.5 billion for just the data monetization. But this isn't going to happen without some pretty big changes in the industry. We need skill set changes in terms of what we value as organizations. We need different underlying capabilities in terms of this analytic infrastructure. We need to recognize that 80% of the data collected out there in the telecommunications world is basically not used. Not used. This is a huge waste that less than 20% of the data is actually used to impact and create value. Now, we know that the revenues from traditional B2C services are going down. The amount of data that we can collect, particularly with 5G, is increasing. What are we going to do about it? Are we going to continue to let it sit there in a warehouse, count the number of bytes we have as a measure of success? I hope not. Right? We need to, yes, recognize that the cost of storing data is going down, so that's good. That's better return on investment. But data that you store and do nothing with is still a cost, even if it's a lower cost. Even if it's a lower per unit cost, that's not a win. A win is when we create value from that data by becoming a dataco instead of a telco. By creating internal capabilities to analyze what's going on and partner across many different industries in order to create value, whether this is in the transportation and logistics industry, whether this is in the consumer-oriented industries, there's huge opportunity. Let me look a bit deeper just into the B2C side of it and what we can do for our partners who ultimately have their own consumer clients. So we know already how to collect location-based data and make that available with very low latency, and that's great. I know that this set of consumers are within 100 meters of a McDonald's at lunchtime. I can do that today. Not good enough. Not good enough. I need to be able to understand what are the particular preferences of this individual. I need to know things like their age and gender and the type of device they're using, even their occupation. I can know these things if I'm part of this circle of life. Believe me, Meta knows, Google knows, Alibaba knows, right? So do we want to be the dumb pipe? Or do we want to use this data, which we have access to, in order to create profiles for which we can say, yes, okay, they're within 100 meters of the McDonald's, but actually, this is not the right person for a 2-for-1 Big Mac offer. Not the right person. Because we know that this person has a different set of preferences. We need to understand the behavioral data that gives us unique insight into each individual. This is what a dataco does. And when we do that, we can help our retail partners be much more successful. And by the way, this does not mean exposing the data of individuals to these retail partners. By providing API-based services and microservices, we enable this capability while retaining the integrity of the data, the ownership of the data, the privacy of the data, and so on. With transportation, we're working with the Land Transport Agency in Singapore. And the data that we collect understanding the movement of all of the citizens of Singapore, understanding how that is coordinated with the metro system, even the taxis. So we understand the location of every taxi, whether they have a customer in them or not. We understand how people are getting from their homes to the nearest metro stop. Right? All of this data, right, is consumed by the ground transport agency in this particular case, and creating huge value. We can understand what is the wait time in the airport for getting through the security lines, what is the flow of people through the airport, and so on. All this data is available. Are we helping our partners, the airports, the land transport agencies, the retailers, and so on, in order to create value from this? If we have a big event in, let's say, Tomorrowland in Boom, Belgium, do we know who is attending the event and what other events and what retailers that they also patronized? Right? Tourism authorities are very interested in this. We've done some very interesting work with Vodafone in Czech Republic, specifically in this area. And the ability of 5G to give me this information with low latency and to enable this transformation into Dataco is hugely powerful for transformation of the business. So now there's a call to action. If we want to participate, we have to transform. We cannot keep doing what we've been doing. So we need to overhaul data management capabilities. The Open Digital Architecture published by TM Forum is a sort of high-level baseline for some of the things that need to happen, but you need to make it yours. You need to create the capabilities internally to manage your data, not as an asset, not as something you collect and store somewhere, but as a product that you're going to consume and create value from. Which means that it's more than just storing the data. It's having the analytic capability to transform the raw data into something that we can use to predict and do the hypersegmentation and to create value through API-based services to our customers. Right? That's our goal in working with the telecommunications customers that we engage with. Our goal is to take this data and help enable the CFO of the future, to help enable the telco of the future, which is a Dataco, to change the way that you do everything, to get the full customer 360. Location is not customer 360. There's a lot more than that goes on, and by providing services and acquiring the data and transforming the data into understanding and insights, we have the ability to change the industry, change our position in the industry, reverse this trend of plummeting return on invested capital. We work with 10 out of the top 10 communications companies in the Americas. I'm from Silicon Valley. I'm sure you can hear that in my accent. We're aggressively pursuing the ability to help transform in the European marketplace as well. So with that, I thank you very, very much. Thank you.